and I welcome the public, the staff and the media. Thank you all for coming along. I have an apology from Carolyn Cameron, and I'd like it recorded with deep sadness and regret. I have an apology from Councillor Lovett. These apologies be sustained. Please say aye. Aye. Those against, carried. Thank you. Is there any extraordinary business for the committee? There seems to be none. Are there any declarations of conflict of interest? Yes, some people may suggest that I have a conflict of interest in item 5. I own a property on which there is 1/4 of a hectare of native Kanuka fenced off from stock in its natural state. Does anyone object to me carrying on chairing the meeting? Thank you. I now move on to the terms of reference for the Community Services Committee, and from the Chair I will give notice that I have a suggested recommendation that you can think about while we go through, and the suggested recommendation is that the Community Services Committee recommend to Council that Council adopts the terms of reference for the Community Services Committee as set out in Appendix 1. I took my guidance from item 5. You'll notice when you get to that. But I'll have to wait for someone to move that at a later stage. Does anyone have any questions on the background of the terms of reference? Does anyone have any questions about the options, the legal and policy implications? All good. Does anyone have any questions about the Community Services Committee draft terms of reference? Okay. Councillors, committee members, I would like to suggest a change. In the meeting frequency, it reads that the Community Services Committee will meet on a 6-weekly cycle, or more frequently on as required as determined by the Chair and Group Managers of Community Services. I'm actually struggling with those last 5 words, and I suggest that they be removed. If the Chief Executive, who is the only person that works for us, decides that there should be a meeting, and he may delegate that the Chair of a committee be asked to convene a committee, I think that's good governance, and it leaves the councillors in control of giving instructions to the Chief Executive, their only employee. Would anyone agree with me?
Yes, I'd agree with that. Yeah. As the Chief Executive is our only employee, we should convene meetings with him and the Chair if one is required.
Okay. So how do you wish it worded, Mr. Mayor?
Just the way you had it.
I'm just taking the words "and Group Managers Community Services" out and leaving it as that.
Determined by the Chair and the Chief Executive.
Who's the Chief Executive's boss?
The Council.
Okay.
So through
Mr. Chief Executive.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I mean, we're obviously wanting to make this work. The only intent of that is that if there was urgent business or indeed insufficient business, then there would be a conversation and the decision would be made whether the meeting needs to be an extra meeting. So we're just simply trying to make it work for efficiency. If you could have just the Chair, you can have the Chair and the Chief Executive. The reality will be there'll be a discussion and the Chair will have a view, and if there's no need for a meeting or if there's a need for an urgent interim meeting, then that's what we'll do.
So there's no need to change my suggestion?
No, I think the practical reality will be exactly
as you describe. I
what,
totally agree.
what we're going to
Yes.
do, yeah.
Yep. Okay. Councillor Wilson.
Thanks, Mr. Chairman. If you're going to withdraw your suggestion, I won't need to comment, but I'm not in favour of... I think we should liaise with our committee chairs, because that's who will have the information, and if there's anything that he wants to bring up, it'll be him that you liaise with, not the chief executive.
I totally agree with you, councillor. This is a terms of reference. Does anyone have anything else they wish to raise in the draft terms of reference? Councillor Rawlinson.
Sorry, no, I just want to go back and clarify which way we are going to move with your suggestion, yes or no. It's not clear to me yet which way you want to do it, or which way we're determining that we should do it.
Okay, well, I've asked for that and I'll tidy it up when I move a motion. Any further discussion?
Through you, Mr. Chair, one thing I was just going to point out, and you're free to change this, but if you do change it, it will then be inconsistent with the terms of reference for the other committees, which have all got the same wording with the relevant group manager.
I'm absolutely aware of that. Councillor Rawlinson.
My view on that is that, yes, the chair is the chair of that group, but I still think liaison with for the chair just to have the determining factor, I think is not right. I think that the chair should be liaising with the group manager and we're probably going to have this discussion in all of the different groups if we're going to change it. I think that one person should not have control, what I'm saying.
Okay, I don't think I ever said those words.
Didn't by determined by the chair, full stop, does mean that to me that the chair only has control.
Okay. We will test it. Any further questions? Okay, I will move from the chair that the Community Services Committee recommends to Council that Council adopts the amended terms of reference for the Community Services Committee as set out in Appendix 1. And the amendment is that "and group managers community services" be deleted. Do I have a seconder?
I'll second.
Okay. Discussion on the motion. Mr. Mayor.
Yeah, I believe it's the chairman who calls the meetings. Obviously, there would be discussion with the group services manager. Obviously, there'd be discussion, but it's the chair who calls the meetings.
Further discussion, Councillor Brown.
I can't see a problem the way it is standing, to be quite honest. It's still determined by the chair. And if we put a full stop behind the chair and the group of manager of community services, so it always comes through the chair. With just one full stop behind the word chair.
Do you wish to do anything with your suggestion?
I'd rather have it the way I'm saying it. This is my suggestion.
Councillor Wilson.
Thanks, Mr. Chairman. I haven't got a vote, but I'm opposed to the amendment.
Thank you. Well, I have no amended motion, so I'm going to put the motion to the vote. I'll read it out to you. That the Community Services Committee recommends to Council to Council that Council adopts the terms of reference, the amended terms of reference for the Community Services Committee as set out in Appendix 1. All those in favour, please say aye. Aye. Those against, please say no.
No.
Tied vote. Can I refer to... I didn't bring it.
I think the chair has the casting vote.
I move accordingly. The motion is passed. We'll see what happens when it gets to council. Councillors, we now move to the item 5, the submission on the proposed National Policy Statement, Indigenous Biodiversity. Does anyone have any questions of staff? Councillor Brown.
Oh, sorry.
Must be on, isn't it? Okay. Is there any questions? Yes, Councillor Brown.
Just one question, it's on page 12, item 11. It talks about the district plan, the cost was 2.2 million, and it's paid back over a 15-year period. I thought it was paid back over a 10-year period, the life of the plan, but seeking just clarification.
Through you, Mr Chair, I thought that too, but I did double check that with Paul Brake and it was extended. So it is 15 years.
Okay. Further questions? Councillors, I'm going to ask you all a question. Are you happy that we include the words expansion of irrigation and dairy farming in New Zealand Plains has been major factors in this growth? Because I'm wondering that when this gets to the select committee, it may be picked up by one political party or two political parties, but it may actually be the thorn in the side of 3 others. I'm quite happy to leave it there, but I just thought I should raise it if you thought it might have more teeth if it wasn't there. Okay. Would someone like to move the recommendation?
Just a quick comment on your observation on item number 3, on bullet point number 3, the expansion of irrigation in dairy farming. I could be happy to have dairy farming removed, but it's irrigation that has provided the expansion for this district, and dairy farming is one part of it, but there's been a lot of other development from seeds and horticulture and with that irrigation as well. So if you left dairy farming in, you would need to add some more words or take dairy farming out, because it's one part.
You have obviously studied the causes of so-called environmental things that have happened since that has taken place. So it's not just dairy farming. That's quite right. I agree with you. Yeah. Councillor Rawlinson?
I don't disagree with Councillor Brown. I was just going to comment that I think the staff have presented this well, and apart from the odd suggested change, I'm quite happy with it.
Okay. All quite happy we just take that on board? You're quite happy?
No, I want to know what you want me to do. Do you want me to take out dairy farming?
Okay. Okay. All those in favour that the words and dairy farming come out, all those in favour, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Those against? Carried. Does anyone wish to move the recommendation? Okay, Councillor Rawlinson.
Yes, I'm happy to move the recommendation that the Community Service Committee recommends to Council that the attached submission on the proposed National Policy Statement for Indigenous Biodiversity be approved.
Do I have a seconder? Councillor Brown.
Sure.
Do you wish to make comment, Councillor Rawlinson?
No, as I said earlier, I'm happy with the way the staff have presented it to us.
Well, I would actually like to congratulate the staff especially in the section implementation and resourcing, where they've spelt out the costs to local governments across New Zealand. So it won't necessarily be the government that's paying for this, it'll be the ratepayers of New Zealand that will be paying for this. So all those in favour, please say aye. Those against, carried. Thank you, Jane, for that good submission. Right. Now we now move on to the Economic Development Quarterly Report, and I invite Mr. Bevan Rickaby, the Economic Development Manager, to present. Welcome, Bevan. The floor is yours.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I think the report is pretty much self-explanatory. I'm more than happy to take any questions. There was some comment made by Philippa that it might have been a little bit hard to read the some of the statistics at the end, and so I've got the PowerPoint here if you want to want me to run through it, but we'll take any questions from any other part of the report first.
Councillor Rawlinson.
I have a question on item number 30 regarding the moving of the railhead, and I know it's been discussed here so often, but every time we discuss it I ask myself, apart from it being an absolute eyesore, what is the benefit to move it? We don't see a lot of activity there with a railhead apart from a little bit of grain. We don't actually see any activity there nowadays, or very, very little, and I know the astronomical costs to move it, but if we do move it, and we probably end up paying for it, what is the financial benefit?
The reason for that I understand when I read back over the reports for wanting it moved is pretty much that it is an eyesore, and it's a long way away also from where the businesses would actually like it, and it has a lot of restrictions because of its size and what you can actually build there. So there is a lot of trucks move up and down State Highway 1 because of that railhead not being as efficient as it could be, because it was built a long time ago, and it needs to be upgraded. The actual financial benefit, I think those better to answer that would be the industry, and there is certainly no conversations going on at the moment about any council money input.
Councillor Wilson.
Thanks, Mr. Chairman. I've got a question about my next move.
Yes.
Is it part of this? Has it got financial implications for us? Are we putting finance into that, or is it purely provided by government?
The funding to set it up is supplied by government, and it has been sitting with Nigel Davenport in Timaru, because he applied for it. He uses it across all his school and been doing it for 2 years. And then once it's up and running, there is more government funding coming. They've got 10 areas that they have nominated first, and that Timaru is part of that. So the expectation is that there will be a continuing flow of money, but no guarantee at this point.
Mr. Mayor.
Just on the rail in the middle of Ashburton, and to give Councillor Rawlinson some update, I suppose. I've had the odd meeting with people who are looking at rail and looking at moving, and Mr. Rickaby is right, there's no council money involved. So hopefully by the end of this year we will have some certainty in it. I can tell you there is dialogue going on and it's being worked on, and hopefully by the end of this calendar year we'll have more certainty in what's happening. So something is happening.
Okay. If I could make comment, every time I sit at Walnut Avenue, West Street, and I have to wait for a shunting train, I think. Can't we get rid of this yard out of here? Oh, I believe my comments stand. Mr. Rickaby, would you like to quickly take us through your slides, please?
It was there before. My able assistant. Here we go. As a request, when I was talking to the Chief Executive, he thought it would be a good idea if we just had a good close look at what the district actually looks like at this present point in time. So what I've done, most of this information is available on the Infometric site on our websites, but I thought I'd just bring in some of the new information since the 2018 census. It's quite interesting when you see that we're up by 2,379, and the greatest increase in that is in the workforce age group, which was a surprise to me when I actually looked at it, because I think we continuously hear that the district probably is getting a little grey. It appears that that's not the reality, so sometimes looking at statistics is actually quite a good idea, and that's encouraging. However, that young workforce is probably not homegrown. It will be a lot of people that are moving to the district from other parts of the world. So we've got the early nesters and the retirees, and just what our population actually looks like against the rest of the country. I think that answers itself, and I think it also shows, because of the continuing increase in the diversity of our population, the importance of our Welcoming Communities project. Just ask any questions as we wander on through it, if don't mind being interrupted. So what I did was had a look at the affordability to own a home, and here in Ashburton, and it's a heck of a lot more affordable than other parts of the country, and there is a big skew in that, certainly in late 2018. Obviously the Auckland market keeps climbing, but also you will have read recently the Dunedin market has gone absolutely crazy as well. So it is certainly affordable to live here and also rent here. I haven't been able to get figures yet, but I'm looking for them on the availability of rental properties, but I understand that market is quite close, and Councillor Letham, you may have more knowledge of that than I do. Okay. So top 12 employment options, and I think this comes back to our My Next Move as well, because what we want to do is we want to be able to show the young people coming out of the college that, and Mount Hart, is that it's not, when you talk about meat processing, it's not about just having a knife in your hand and being on the floor. There's laboratories, there's technicians, there's engineers, there's all those other all that other work that you can actually do within inside the area here in mid-Canterbury. So I just picked the top 12, and there is a lot of technical jobs involved in all those.
Councillor Wilson.
I've got a question.
Yes.
If you go back there. The council are putting money into Experience Mid-Canterbury, but tourism doesn't show up as far as employment goes.
Well, tourism is across all those things, because the tourists stop here and they use the supermarket. They're also using the cafe and restaurants, so the only thing that isn't there, I suppose, is the smaller number of people that actually work in accommodation and places like that. It's kind of lower down the list, but tourism is into that supermarket, and it would be if I went in and just got the tourism numbers, I could show you how many people we've got involved in that, but it is spread across a lot of businesses. Does that answer the question, Councillor?
Councillor McMillan?
My question was similar, but I mean, there would be over 200 workers up at Mount Hutt. So are they classed as seasonal workers and not
Yep.
in this? Yeah, so you're just looking at
Yep.
all year round
Yep,
workers.
yep.
Yeah.
People that live and work in the district.
And quite often tourism workers are seasonal workers, so they wouldn't be included in that.
That's true. Average income. It has continued to track slightly behind the New Zealand average, but not too bad. And there's the tourism spending growth. So the tourism spending growth in the district for GDP has certainly followed what's happening in the rest of the country. The graph, when tourism's down, obviously spending's down here, but it's tracking in the right direction. Now, I'll keep updating that as things update. Infometrics update that on a quarterly basis, but those numbers and figures are available to any of you on the website. Any other questions?
Thank you, Mr. Rickby.
Thank you.
Very good. I have a question of the group manager. How does all this information get to council?
I will defer to the Chief Executive.
Through you, Mr. Chair, we send all committee agendas to all councillors. So all councillors have this information, and the minutes of this meeting, which may or may not include recommendations, go through to the council for consideration.
Okay, so all this information that this committee has seen, councillors will see it in their agenda as well as the agenda of the committees.
No, sorry, all councillors get the Community Services Committee agenda.
I said that at the end, yes.
Yeah, so they will
Yes,
have
that's
this
it,
through
that's
that vehicle. Yeah.
Any further questions, councillors? Okay, Mr. Mayor.
Just to comment on the My Next Move project in here.
Yep.
If you're moving on to that now.
Yes, yes.
Yep. It looks a really good initiative to do that, to get into the schools and promote businesses and industries and give them the right message from an agricultural based district in our schools, because only some teachers in the schools don't seem to have the right message that I hear at times. So this project will help that, and a project which is probably going to come on our radar and talk with Councillor McMillan yesterday is getting driver's licences for these school kids as well. So when they come out, they are fully work ready rather than partially work ready, and hopefully they'll have a driver's licence when they come out of school. There's plenty of plans out there to get the children to have their licences, but it's a matter of collating all the programs into one spot and delivering on it. So I applaud this Next Move initiative.
Mr Rickaby.
Through you, Mr Chair, if I could make a comment. Aisling O'Reilly, who is sitting back here, is setting this up for us. And she had an interesting conversation yesterday with one of the agribusinesses here in town, where the owner of that business said that they were right behind this because his two sons went through it because they went to Timaru Boys, and they found it just so directional, and getting them some work, and so we've already got someone that's going to stand up and actually tell us how good it is, because he's had children through it. So that is very encouraging. Plus, both the high schools have come back to us now. They're back at school, and they just are all over it. They just want us to meet their senior management teams and explain how they can be of help.
Councillor Brown.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Just a question. Years ago, there was a scheme like this already here at Ashburton College, that the students, especially the senior ones, could go out to work, get work practices, and went back. So, you know, and we were part of it for years. That dried up. Do you know why that happened? Because this is almost the same system again, with a fancy name and. Yeah.
I think you're thinking about, and it may be, I may have it wrong, Gateway, which is about the normally year 12 students who are sort of losing their way with education, and so they get them out into industry. This is about, the difference here is it's about starting to talk to the students at year 9 when they first go into high school. They have most of them have no idea what they want to do out the other end. You have a propensity for high schools, not just here but everywhere, to try and push people towards university, and as we well know, that may be the outcome, and they go and get a job somewhere else and are not aware of some of the jobs that are here in mid-Canterbury. And we had a presentation just recently from a group from young farmers, and they made it quite clear that those at college, at high school level, think going to farming is just about mucking out dairy sheds and, you know, wandering around doing that. They just don't see the technical side that's going on. So this is about getting people into business at year 9 and start to get some direction on where they're actually going. And there's one story, not to take up too much time, in Timaru, where a girl down there at year 9 wasn't quite sure what to do, thought she was quite good at science, finished up working, doing this project through DB Breweries, finished up in their laboratory, is now being put through university by DB Breweries to come back and work in their laboratory. She didn't realise it was available in Timaru. So there's some really good stories.
Now, I certainly support it, but I wasn't sure if it was the same.
Councillor Rawlinson.
Thank you. No, I fully support it too. I have a grandson going into year 12 next week, and he's on this pathway, but it's been self-driven and family-driven, but I can see where it will be so beneficial to the kids that need it, but not only all of them that need direction, but also involving the career opportunities, bringing people more engaged into it, I think is a great thing for our district.
Hey, does someone wish to move the recommendation?
I've just got a question, if that's
Question,
okay. Thank you.
Deputy Mayor.
Thank you. Through the chair, so I think it's great as well. I've got a son going into year 10 this year, and when I read that, I thought, what a great great asset for him. But how closely are you working with MSD through this? So you've talked about funding, but are you working with our local officers?
No, through you, Mr. Chair, the project doesn't involve MSD at all. It's a direct link with the students and industry. So although they through the back door are funding it, they see it as a fund to stop them seeing those students later on in life.
Okay. Can we move forward? Councillor Rawlinson.
So I'm happy to move the recommendation that the Community Services Committee receives the Economic Development Quarterly Update.
Do I have a seconder?
Second that.
Councillor Brahm, are there any discussion or points you wish to make? Councillor Rawlinson? No. Good. All those in favour, please say aye. Aye. Those against, carried. We now move to item 7, the Community Grants and Funding Policy. This is all part of your department now. Okay. Do you have any points you wish to make, Rachel?
Thank you. Through the Chair. So this policy acts as a high-level document for any groups applying to Council for grants or funding. The intention is not to provide the individual grant criteria in the policy, as that's detailed on the application forms, which the committee would see before. I think the committee has decided on that before it goes out. There's main changes proposed to the policy. The first is just tidying up the references to which committee would be overseeing this. So obviously this is now Community Services Committee. And the second is detailing the groups which are ineligible to apply for council grants and funding. In the policy, these are detailed as education centres, with the rationale being that these groups have been denied funding in the past, on the basis that they can access funding from central government. And secondly, political and religious groups, with the rationale being that council would be at reputational risk if being seen to support the political or religious beliefs of any groups. However, in saying that these groups can still apply if the purpose isn't to further their beliefs. There are various other changes proposed which are detailed in the report, but happy to take questions.
Councillor Wilson.
Thanks, Mr. Chairman. The school holiday programs in the past have been under the wing of church groups. Are we now excluding them, or is that still be allowed?
Through the Chair, because the purpose of the school holiday program is community-wide, they wouldn't be excluded.
Further questions? Yeah, I have one. I'll handle it slightly different. I would like to ask the group manager that if we move the recommendation as written there, how does it get to council? So council can actually make a decision on it.
My understanding of that is that the committee secretary, whoever from Democracy has taken the minutes, then collates all of these and they go through to council as recommendations as part of the minutes of this committee meeting.
Thank you. There was a key word there, and so I would like to move the recommendation, and it would read that the Community Services Committee recommend that Council adopts the revised community grants and funding policy with the next review scheduled in 2025. Do I have a seconder?
As I understand you, it's exactly as the recommendation is standing, isn't it? Or are you just changing some words there?
I have moved a recommendation.
As it
I have
stands?
moved a motion that the Community Services Committee recommend that Council adopts the revised community grants and funding policy with the next review scheduled 2025. I put those words together because the group manager said a very key word that this committee recommends to council. Didn't actually say recommends to council, she said recommend. Do I have a seconder?
I still got a question. The way it's been read, or the way it's been said, and standing here, it still goes to council for a full discussion. Is that correct? Is that intent?
Yes, through you, Mr Chairman, that is correct, and it would sit, if that wording remained unchanged, it would be sitting within the minutes of the Community Services Committee. with
To
that
be
wording.
confirmed by full council.
Yes.
Why are we changing?
Okay, I'm just testing out to try and keep things in order. But it's okay. Do I have a seconder? My motion lacks for a seconder. Do I have someone else?
Could I move the recommendation as it stands, that council adopts the revised community grants and funding policy with the next review scheduled for 2025?
And I'll second it.
Could I take leave of the committee to ask the mover a question? And the question is, in the draft, in the Community Services Committee terms of reference, we move that in its sphere of council business and, if you read the delegation reads, Community
could you
Services
tell me where
Committee
we
has
are?
no delegated authority to make decisions in its role as considered and review matters of strategy, policy, significance in its sphere of council business, and, if appropriate, make recommendations to full council. How does those words sit with your recommendation, please?
Which page are you on, please? Thank you.
Looks as if the Chief Executive was just to answer a question.
Would just, I think both the recommendation that lapsed for want of a seconder and the one that is currently on the books give effect to exactly the same thing. This committee has no power other than to recommend to council. So the wording, to add wording that says you're recommending to council makes it really, really clear. But in the absence of that wording, it's still a recommendation to council. So I would suggest that either wording achieves exactly the same thing. It is a recommendation to council because that's the only authority this committee actually has.
Do you wish to discuss further your
I'm
motion?
quite happy what the CEO tells us.
Any further discussion on the motion? All those in favour, please say aye.
Aye.
Those against, please say no. The chair does, but it's in no relation to the report, which was excellent. It's in the procedural matter only. Thank you. And that brings to a close the committee agenda, and I wish to thank everyone for their presence, for their time, for the questions they asked, and also the staff reports that have been done to a very, very high standard, and the questions have been answered by staff in a high standard as well. I declare the committee closed. Thank you.